Hello class, welcome to the next segment in week 1. And in this next segment, we're going to talk a little bit more about print statements and some of the more finer details that you might encounter either in this class or by looking through other people's Python code. So that's going to be the main subject for this class, just giving you a sort of an overview on some stuff that you might encounter and just sort of explaining what exactly is going on with that so that you're not completely lost and confused. Hopefully you're not completely lost and confused. So the first thing that we're going to look at is something that uses the carriage, what's referred to as a carriage return. And so here we have a print statement like we had in the previous segment where we have the print, the parentheses, the quotation marks, and then some text that we want the computer to put in the console. So here we have line 1, and here we have this little \n, which the combination of these two characters, that is the backslash and the n that immediately follows it, this tells the computer to actually go down to the next line and then continue writing out the text. So if we go back to here, we can demonstrate how each individual print statement goes on its own separate line. So this first print statement, hello class, goes on its own separate line in the console, and then the you must construct additional pylons also goes on its own separate line. But you can sort of shorthand that process by using the \n here. So the way that the computer is going to read this off is it's going to start printing out line 1, \n, which means go down to the next line, and then continue writing line 2. So that's going to ultimately give me a result that looks something like this. So you see I get line 1, then it goes down to the next line in the console, and then continues writing line 2. So this essentially just accomplishes the same thing as having two separate print statements, one printing line 1 and the other one printing out line 2. So you can see it gives me the exact same result. Another thing that you can sometimes encounter is you can actually use this backslash to do a lot of interesting things, one of which also involves \T. So this \n is basically the computer's equivalent of hitting the enter or return key to go down to the next line. Another one that you can use is \T, which is basically the computer equivalent of hitting the tab key. So if you hit the tab key, you can get a lot of extra spacing, and you can make things appear nice and pretty in, say, nice fancy tables. So that would be one potential use for using the \T to create sort of what we call what the technical term for this is, I guess, a tab character. But if you look at what this program is going to do, it's going to write line 1, then hit the \T, so that means hit the tab key, create some spacing, and then you continue writing line 2. So you can see here we have line 1, then some spacing here, and then it prints out line 2. And another thing that you can do is you can actually put quotation marks in the middle of the print statement. So one thing that I should also point out, just go ahead and demonstrate while we're on this topic, if you try to do this, so order is very important when you're going to create print statements, because if I were to attempt to do something like this, okay, I have print with parentheses, so I have an opening and a closing parentheses, and I also have quotation marks here. But the issue here is this closed parentheses is actually contained within the quotation marks. And because of that, the computer is going to read this as a parenthesis that should be put in the console's output and not a parenthesis that closes off the print statement. So by putting this closed parentheses in the quotation marks, I'm actually going to get this error message saying unexpected EOF while parsing. Basically, it was looking for a closed parentheses and it never found it. And the reason why it didn't treat this as the closing parentheses for the print statement is because this is contained within the quotation marks of the print statement. So the computer thinks that this closed parentheses should be included as the output of the console. This parentheses this parentheses is not acting to complete the full setup of the print statement. It's not closing or completing the print statement, whereas this parentheses outside of the quotation marks would in fact complete that statement. You can see here how this does in fact, as it is now. Now I have a closed parentheses that does close off this open parentheses here, but I've also got this inside the quotation marks. So it's including the closed parentheses here as part of the as far as the program's output. So I'll go ahead and remove that. And so that's just sort of a little side note to sort of keep in mind. The order here is important. So it's print, open parentheses, quote, whatever you want to print out, quote, and then close parentheses. And another thing that you can do is you can actually embed quotes within the console's output. So if I were to try to do something like this, so I have print quote, line 1, quote, and then there's no other open quotation mark until we get to here. And the computer is actually going to kind of complain here, because if I try to do that, it's just going to tell me invalid syntax. And the issue here is the computer was reading through this. So here it saw print, parentheses, quote, and then closing quote. So I assume, okay, that's the end of the print statement. That's part of that's the end of the text that the user wants to see in the console, and it kind of got confused when it saw everything else here at the end. So if you want to embed a quote within the console's output, the way you can do that is you can use backslash, use a backslash and then the double quote here. So this combination right here, backslash double quote, basically tells the computer that this quotation mark is to be included as part of the output in the console. This is not a quotation mark that is closing off or ending this quotation mark at the beginning here. And if I go to run this program right now, you can see how I don't get backslash quote in the output. I in fact just get this. I just in fact get the double quote. So this backslash and the double quote is in fact interpreted as just one character, and that one character is a double quote. So you can use that to embed quotation marks within the program's output. It works the same with a single quote. So just make sure that if you want to embed quotation marks inside of your program's output, for now you want to make sure that you use the combination of a backslash, a backward slash, and the double quotation mark here, so that you get this nice lovely lovely message as opposed to this nice lovely message. And you might also be wondering, okay, what if I want to get a backslash, just a regular old backslash? The way you would accomplish that is you would actually do backslash to get just a regular backward slash in the program's output. If you try just doing a single backslash, then it's going to read this as, okay, so you have a backslash and then a capital L, so that's going to do some sort of special function. In this case, it's not very consequential, but if I had, say this, something like this, if I had line 1 and line 2, and if I put a random backslash in here, now it's going to read this as a carriage return that is going down to the next line, so I'm going to get this result instead. So just be careful about the backslash thing, so make sure you have something valid that will follow it. So backslash n is one option if you want to go down to the next line, backslash t if you want to tab over, then if you want the quotation marks, you can use either one of these options. Or if you wanted to put a backslash in the program's output itself, then you would have to use a double backslash to accomplish that. So that's going to do it for this next segment on print statements. And in the next segment, we're going to talk a little bit about variables, and that will get into the side of doing something a bit more useful with Python. So with that, I will see you all in the next segment.